Dawn came pale and cold, the kind of cold that turned spit to ice before it hit the ground. Jonas Callahan walked his fence line like he'd done every January morning for 15 years, boots crunching through frost that bit through leather. Wind howled across the valley, carrying the smell of pine smoke from distant chimneys. 50 yards out, something dark broke the white. A flour sack, torn edges, freezing. Jonas knelt. Inside, a child, maybe 10 years old, lips blue as creek ice, breath coming in shallow clouds. A note was pinned to the sack, ink harsh and black. Damaged goods, contract void, she's yours now. VD. A $5 bill was tucked beside her, like returning a broken tool. The girl's eyes fluttered open, green, terrified. She whispered through chattering teeth, "Mama said you'd help." Jonas lifted her. Across the valley, smoke rose from the Drummond estate. She gasped, "He'll come for me." Jonas kicked the cabin door open, Rose limp in his arms. The fire had burned down to embers. He laid her on the rag rug, added wood till flames roared, then stripped off her frozen coat. Ice crystals clung to the wool like tiny teeth. Her dress was soaked through, stiff as canvas. He wrapped her in every blanket he owned, tucked them tight around her shaking body. The kettle on the stove still held warm water. He poured it into the wash basin, tested it with his wrist, not too hot, and began wiping frost from her hands. Her fingers were white, bloodless. "Can you hear me?" His voice came out rough, unused to company. She nodded, eyes shut tight. "Need to get you warm. That's all I'm doing. You understand?" Another nod. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and old coffee. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Jonas worked in silence, warming her hands, her feet, checking for frostbite. When color finally crept back into her skin, he let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. He heated milk on the stove, added a spoonful of honey. She drank it in small sips, hands trembling so badly he had to steady the cup. "What's your name, child?" "Rose." Her voice was small, like something that might break. "Rose Henley." "I'm Jonas. Jonas Callahan. This is my ranch." He paused. "You know who left you out there?" Her face went pale again. "Mr. Drummond. He said I was damaged goods, that the contract was void." Jonas felt his jaw tighten. He'd known Virgil Drummond for 10 years, known him for a land-hungry bastard who'd squeeze a widow for her last acre. But this? What contract? Rose's hands twisted in the blanket. "Mama died last year. Mr. Drummond said he was my guardian. He had papers. He said I was supposed to be—" She couldn't finish. Jonas's stomach turned. Mail order ward. He'd heard of it. Desperate men buying children as future brides for their sons, working them like servants till they came of age. Legal in some territories, stomach turning everywhere. "You got anybody else? Any kin?" She shook her head, then, as if remembering, she reached for her coat. From the torn pocket, she pulled out a small photograph, creased, water-stained. A woman's face, dark-haired, serious. "My mama, Clara Henley." Jonas studied the photo. He didn't recognize her, but something in the set of her jaw reminded him of Rose, stubborn, even in a tintype. "She homesteaded?" "Yes, sir. West of here, I think. But when she died, Mr. Drummond said she owed him money. He said I had to work it off." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He said I belonged to him now." Jonas set the photo down carefully. Rage sat in his chest like a hot coal, but his voice stayed level. "You don't belong to anybody, Rose. You understand me? Nobody owns a child." She looked at him with those wide green eyes like she wanted to believe him but couldn't quite manage it. He stood, poured himself coffee, stared out the window. Across the valley, maybe 2 miles as the crow flies, the Drummond place sat on higher ground. Big house. Painted white. Virgil had money, freight contracts, land deals, a finger in every pie from here to Helena. And Jonas? He had a cabin, 40 head of cattle, and a banknote coming due in 3 months. He turned back to Rose. She'd pulled the blanket up to her chin, watching him. "You ever been hit, child?" She flinched. Didn't answer. That was answer enough. "Won't happen here," Jonas said. "You're safe. Long as you're under this roof, nobody touches you. Not Drummond, not anybody." She studied him, weighing his words like a banker weighing gold. "He'll want me back," she said finally. "He always gets what he wants." Jonas looked at her, this scrap of a girl who'd dragged herself through a blizzard, who'd been bought and sold like livestock, who still had the grit to warn him what was coming. Let him try. Outside, the wind picked up. Through the window, Jonas could see smoke rising from the Drummond estate. A gray column against the white sky. It looked like a threat. It probably was. Rose's eyes drifted shut. Exhaustion pulled her under. Jonas sat in his chair by the fire, rifle across his knees, and waited for morning. The photograph lay on the table, Clara Henley, staring at nothing. He wondered what kind of woman homesteaded alone, what kind of strength it took. Wondered what killed her. Wondered if Virgil Drummond had anything to do with it. 3 days later, hoofbeats broke the morning quiet. Jonas stepped onto the porch. Rose was inside, mending one of his shirts. Her hands were quick with a needle, he'd noticed. Useful skill out here. Virgil Drummond rode up on a bay gelding, expensive tack, silver on the bridle. He was a big man, gone soft in the middle, with a face like a hammer and eyes that calculated everything. He didn't dismount. Callahan. Drummond. Got something belongs to me. Jonas crossed his arms. Don't see anything here that's yours. Virgil reached into his coat, pulled out a folded document. Legal guardianship, signed by Clara Henley before she passed. That girl's my ward. You're harboring her unlawfully. The paper looked official. Seal, signatures, witness marks. She says you left her to freeze. I sent her your direction. Figured you'd do the Christian thing. Virgil's smile didn't reach his eyes. You did. Now give her back. No. The word hung in the cold air. Virgil's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, Jonas. That girl's mine by law. If I have to bring the sheriff out here, I will. And when I do, you'll lose more than just her. He wheeled his horse around, rode off, didn't look back. Rose appeared in the doorway, face white. He'll hurt you now. Jonas watched the rider disappear over the ridge. Reckon he'll try. Jonas needed supplies. The winter had been harder than expected, and with Rose to feed now, his stores were running low. He hitched the wagon on a gray morning, the sky promising more snow. Rose watched from the porch, wrapped in one of his old coats. It hung past her knees. You'll be all right here, he said. Bolt the door. Don't open it for anybody but me. She nodded, but her hands twisted in the coat sleeves. The ride to Stone Hollow took 2 hours. The town sat in a valley, protected from the worst winds. A dozen buildings clustered around a main street. General store, bank, saloon, church. The kind of place where everybody knew everybody's business, usually before you knew it yourself. Jonas tied his horse outside Mercer's general store. The bell above the door jangled as he entered. The place smelled of flour dust and kerosene. 3 women stood near the fabric bolts, heads together. They stopped talking when he walked in. Jonas touched his hat brim. Morning, ladies. They nodded back, but their eyes followed him, sharp, assessing. He gathered what he needed, cornmeal, salt pork, coffee, lamp oil. At the counter, Mercer tallied the bill, his face carefully neutral. Heard you got company out at your place, Mercer said, voice low. Word traveled fast. Jonas shouldn't have been surprised. That's right. Drummond's ward, folks say. She needed help. Mercer glanced toward the women, who weren't even pretending not to listen anymore. Virgil's been in town, talking to the sheriff. Says you took his legal ward without permission. Jonas set coins on the counter. Drummond left a 10-year-old girl to freeze in a blizzard. That's what happened. One of the women, Mrs. Patterson, the banker's wife, spoke up. Her voice carried across the store. Mr. Drummond says the girl ran away, that he'd arranged for her to go to your place for safekeeping, but you refused to return her. Jonas turned. Mrs. Patterson's face was pinched, self-righteous. The other women nodded along. That what he's saying? He's very concerned, Mrs. Patterson continued. A young girl, alone, with an unmarried man. It's improper. People are talking, Mr. Callahan. The words hit like a fist to the gut. Jonas felt heat crawl up his neck. That child was half dead when I found her, had frostbite, bruises. His voice stayed level, but barely. I did what any decent person would do. Of course, Mrs. Patterson said, her tone suggesting she believed nothing of the sort. But you understand how it looks. A man alone, keeping a young girl, refusing to return her to her legal guardian. The implication hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Mercer cleared his throat. Jonas, I got to ask. You got credit here, but until this situation gets cleared up, I can't extend it no more. Cash only. Jonas stared at him. They'd done business for 10 years. That how it is? Mercer wouldn't meet his eyes. That's how it's got to be. Jonas gathered his supplies and walked out. Behind him, the women's whispers started up again, loud enough to follow him through the door. Outside, the wind cut through his coat. He loaded the wagon, hands moving automatically while his mind churned. Virgil wasn't just coming after Rose. He was poisoning the whole town against Jonas first. Smart, cruel, effective. Jonas climbed onto the wagon seat. Before he could snap the reins, a rider approached. Sheriff Reeves, a lean man with gray in his mustache and eyes that had seen too much. "Jonas, got a minute?" "Not particularly." Reeves dismounted anyway. "This won't take long. Virgil Drummond filed a complaint, says you're holding his ward unlawfully. She's a child he left to die. He's got papers, Jonas, legal guardianship, signed by the girl's mother before she passed." Reeves pulled a document from his coat. "I seen them myself, all proper, witnessed, sealed." Jonas took the paper, scanned it. The signature at the bottom read, Clara Henley, in a careful hand. The date was 2 years old, before Clara died, according to Rose. It looked legitimate. "This is horse shit," Jonas said flatly. "That girl's got healed fractures, ribs, wristed collarbone. You think that's proper guardianship?" Reeves's jaw tightened. "You got proof of that?" Doc Kern examined her. "Then have Doc file a report. Till then, the law's the law." Reeves's voice softened slightly. "Jonas, I know you. You're a good man, but you're playing a dangerous game. Virgil's got lawyers, he's got money, he's got the law on paper. And I've got a child who'll die if she goes back to him. That's not for you to decide." Reeves mounted his horse. "I'm giving you 48 hours to sort this out. After that, I'll have to come to get her myself. You understand?" Jonas understood perfectly. The law wasn't about right or wrong, it was about paper and ink. "Understood." Reeves rode off. Jonas sat on the wagon seat, the guardianship document still in his hand. The signature looked real, the seal looked real, everything looked real. Maybe it was. Maybe Clara Henley had signed her daughter over to Virgil Drummond, and Rose was legally his ward. Maybe Jonas was the one breaking the law. But when he thought of Rose's flinch, her healed fractures, the way she'd whispered, "He'll come for me," like it was a death sentence. The law could go to hell. He snapped the reins, started for home. The sky had darkened, clouds pressing low. Snow was coming again. When he reached the cabin, Rose was at the window. She opened the door before he'd even climbed down from the wagon. "They were talking about me, weren't they?" Jonas carried the supplies inside, set them on the table. The cabin was warm, fire crackling. It smelled of bread. She'd tried baking while he was gone. The loaf sat cooling on the sill, lopsided but earnest. "Some folks don't understand the situation," he said carefully. "They think you took me for bad reasons." Her voice was small. Jonas hung his coat on the peg, faced her. "What they think doesn't matter. What's true matters. Mr. Drummond has papers. I saw them. Mama signed them before she died. He showed me." Rose's eyes filled. "I belong to him. The law says so." Jonas knelt so they were eye level. "Listen to me. Papers can lie. Laws can be wrong. You're a human being, Rose, not property, not livestock. You understand?" She nodded, but tears spilled over anyway. "Sheriff gave me 2 days," Jonas said. "After that, he'll come with a warrant." Rose's face crumpled. "I'll go back. I don't want you to get hurt because of me." "No." "But, no." His voice was firm. "We'll figure something out. I know a doctor in town. Good man. He'll examine you proper, document what happened. And there's a school teacher, B. Lowell. She's got a brain sharp as a skinning knife. If there's a way through this, we'll find it." Rose wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "Why are you helping me?" Jonas stood, looked out the window. Across the valley, smoke rose from the Drummond estate. Always watching, always there. "Because it's right," he said. "That's reason enough." Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall. Doc Elias Kern arrived the next morning, his wagon rattling up the frozen track. He was a wiry man in his 60s, with hands steady as bedrock and eyes that missed nothing. He'd delivered Jonas's stillborn son 3 years ago, stayed through the night while Jonas's wife bled out despite everything he tried. He hadn't charged a cent. Jonas met him at the door. "Appreciate you coming." Sounded urgent. Doc carried his leather bag inside, nodded to Rose. She sat at the table, hands folded, trying to look smaller than she already was. "This the girl?" "Rose Henley." "Rose, this is Doc Kern. He's going to examine you, make sure everything's healing right." Doc set his bag down, pulled out a chair. Hello, Rose. I hear you've had a rough time of it. She nodded, eyes on the table. I'm going to check you over, if that's all right. Won't hurt, just need to see what we're dealing with. His voice was gentle, grandfatherly. You can tell me to stop anytime. This is your body, your choice. Understood? Rose glanced at Jonas. He nodded. All right, she whispered. Doc worked methodically. He checked her hands for frostbite. Healing well, her feet, same. Then he asked her to lift her arms, turn, bend. When his fingers pressed along her ribs, she gasped. Tender? A little. Doc's jaw tightened. He examined her wrist next, then her collarbone. The whole time he kept his face neutral, but Jonas saw the anger building behind his eyes. Finally, Doc stepped back. You can put your arms down, honey. He pulled a small journal from his bag, began writing. The scratch of the pencil was the only sound besides the fire's crackle. 3 healed fractures, Doc said, voice flat. 2 ribs, left side, left wrist, collarbone, all at different stages of healing means they happened at different times, not from a single fall. He looked up at Jonas. This is systematic abuse. Rose stared at the table, shoulders hunched. How long were you with Drummond? Doc asked gently. A year, since Mama died. Doc wrote that down. Did he hit you? She nodded. His son? No. Samuel never... He just looked away. Doc closed his journal. Rose, I'm going to write all this down official. Take it to the sheriff. This is evidence that you were mistreated. Nobody's going to make you go back to that house. You have my word. She looked up at him, hope and disbelief warring on her face. But he has papers. Legal papers. Papers don't mean a damn thing if the man's breaking the law by hurting you. Doc's voice was steel. There's laws against child cruelty, even out here, even for wards. Jonas felt something loosen in his chest. First ally. Doc stood, packed his bag. I'll file a report with Sheriff Reeves today. And Jonas, you might want to talk to B. Lowell. She's good at digging through records. If something's off about these guardianship papers, she'll find it. After Doc left, Jonas saddled his horse. Rose watched from the window as he rode out, her face pressed to the glass like she was afraid he wouldn't come back. The schoolhouse sat on the edge of town, a simple building with a bell tower. School had let out for the day, but lamplight glowed in the windows. Jonas tied his horse and knocked. It's open. Inside, Beatrice Lowell stood at her desk, sorting primers into neat stacks. She was a tall woman, maybe 38, with dark hair pinned back and ink stains on her fingers. Never married, too smart for most men, people said, too opinionated. Jonas had always liked her for it. Jonas Callahan, she looked up surprised. This is a first. You need to learn your letters? Need your help with something else. He took off his hat. It's about the Henley girl. B's expression shifted. I heard. Whole town's talking. Mrs. Patterson's been running her mouth about impropriety and scandal. She set down her primers. What really happened? Jonas told her. All of it. The blizzard, the note, the fractures, Virgil's guardianship papers. When he finished, B was quiet for a long moment. The schoolhouse smelled of chalk dust and old wood. Outside, children's voices drifted past. Some game in the street. I knew Clara Henley, B said finally. Not well, but enough to talk to when she came to town. She homesteaded west of here, past Copper Ridge. 300 acres, did it alone after her husband died. Rose said her mama died sudden. She did. Fever, supposedly. Doctor couldn't save her. B's eyes narrowed. But I remember thinking it was strange how fast Virgil Drummond claimed guardianship. Clara wasn't even cold before he showed up with papers. Too fast? Much too fast. B pulled a shawl around her shoulders. Guardianship papers take time. Witnesses, seals, court filings. But Virgil had everything ready within a week, like he'd known Clara was going to die. The hair on Jonas's neck stood up. Can you check the records? See if something doesn't line up? B nodded slowly. Territorial Land Office keeps copies of all legal documents. Homestead claims, deeds, guardianships. It'll take a few days. I'll have to go to Helena. But if Virgil forged anything, there'll be traces. Appreciate it. Jonas. B's voice stopped him at the door. Be careful. Virgil Drummond doesn't just have money, he's got reach. Bank connections, freight contracts, half the town council in his pocket. If you're going up against him, you need to be sure. I'm sure. She studied him, then nodded. I'll leave tomorrow. If I find something, I'll wire ahead. Jonas rode home as the sun set, painting the snow gold and orange. When he reached the cabin, Rose had dinner waiting, salt pork and beans, simple but hot. She'd set 2 places at the table. They ate in companionable silence. After she cleared the dishes without being asked, washed them carefully, she moved around the cabin like she was trying to earn her place, trying to be useful enough to keep. Rose, Jonas said, you don't have to work for your supper here. You're not a servant. She paused, hands in the wash basin. Then what am I? You're a guest. Maybe more than that, if you want. She turned, face uncertain. What's more than a guest? Jonas didn't have an answer yet. Family felt too big, too soon, but there was something taking root between them, something fragile and new. We'll figure it out, he said. That night, he lay awake while Rose slept in his bed. He'd insisted, taken the floor again. Through the window, he could see the Drummond Estates lights across the valley. Tomorrow was the deadline. Sheriff would come with a warrant, but Doc Kern would have his report filed by then. And B. Lowell was on a train to Helena. For the first time since finding Rose in that flour sack, Jonas felt like he wasn't alone in this fight. Outside, an owl called. The wind had died down. The cold pressed in, but the cabin held it back. Warm, safe, solid. It would have to be enough. The sheriff arrived at noon the next day, flanked by 2 deputies. Jonas had been expecting it. He stood on the porch, rifle leaning against the doorframe within reach, watching them approach. Sheriff Reeves dismounted, handed his reins to one of the deputies. His face was tired, reluctant. Jonas. Sheriff, you know why I'm here. I do. Doc Kern filed a report. Abuse allegations. Reeves pulled a folded paper from his coat. Judge looked at it, said it's concerning, but it doesn't override legal guardianship, not without a full hearing, which takes time. Jonas felt his chest tighten. So you're taking her. I'm here to serve a warrant. You're harboring a minor ward without legal authority. Reeves's voice was stiff, formal. I got to do my job, Jonas. Your job's protecting children from men who break their bones? My job's enforcing the law. The door opened behind Jonas. Rose stepped out, her face pale but set. She'd put on her cleanest dress, pinned her hair back. She looked smaller than ever, but she stood straight. I'll go, she said quietly. I don't want Mr. Callahan to get in trouble. No, Jonas didn't move. You're not going anywhere, Reeves sighed. Jonas, don't make this harder than it has to be. Sheriff, a voice called out. They all turned. Virgil Drummond rode up the track, his bay gelding blowing steam in the cold. He looked pleased with himself, like a man who'd just won a bet. Glad you're here, Reeves. Been waiting long enough. Virgil didn't dismount. He looked at Rose, then at Jonas. You've caused quite a bit of trouble, Callahan, over a simple misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Jonas's voice was flat. The girl ran away. I was concerned for her safety. You should have returned her immediately. Virgil pulled out his guardianship papers again, waved them. But I'm a reasonable man. No charges, no fuss. Just give her back. We all go home. Rose pressed herself against the cabin wall. Jonas could feel her shaking. Reeves looked between them, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Jonas, I need you to let the girl go with Mr. Drummond. Peacefully. Jonas's hand moved toward the rifle. Don't. Reeves's voice sharpened. Don't make me arrest you. For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of snow and pine. Jonas could hear Rose's breathing behind him, quick and shallow. Then a wagon rattled up the track. A familiar voice called out, Hold on there! Doc Kern climbed down, his bag in hand. Behind him came B. Lowell, just returned from town. She looked windblown, determined. Sheriff, before you do anything, you need to hear this. Doc strode forward, pulled out his journal. I examined Rose Henley yesterday, found evidence of systematic abuse. 3 healed fractures at different stages. That's not discipline. That's cruelty. Virgil's face darkened. The girl's clumsy. Falls a lot. Children do. Children don't break their ribs falling, Mr. Drummond. Not 3 separate times. Doc's voice was ice. I'm filing formal charges of child endangerment. On what authority? Virgil snapped. I'm her legal guardian. I have papers. Papers can be forged. B stepped forward. I just got back from the Territorial Records Office in Helena. Thought I'd check something. She pulled a document from her coat. This is Clara Henley's original homestead claim, filed 1878, 300 acres west of Copper Ridge. And here, she unfolded another paper. Is your guardianship document, Mr. Drummond, supposedly signed by Clara before she died? Virgil's jaw tightened. What's your point? My point is timing. B's eyes were sharp. Clara Henley died August 14th, 1890. Your guardianship papers are dated August 10th, 4 days before she died. She knew she was dying, made arrangements. Perhaps, but here's what's interesting. B pulled out a third document. Clara filed an updated will on August 12th, 2 days after she supposedly signed guardianship over to you. In that will, she specifically names her daughter, Rose, as sole heir to her property. No mention of a guardian, no mention of you at all. The silence was deafening. If Clara signed guardianship over to you, B continued, why would she file a will 2 days later that contradicts it? Why wouldn't she mention you as Rose's guardian? Virgil's horse shifted, sensing its rider's tension. That will must be a fake. It's registered with the territorial office. Signed, witnessed, sealed. Want to know who witnessed it? B smiled coldly. Judge Morrison, same judge who just ordered Jonas to return Rose to you. Sheriff Reeves's expression shifted. That true, Virgil? I don't know anything about a will. Because Clara Henley didn't tell you about it, B interrupted. She knew what you were. She protected her daughter the only way she could, by making sure Rose had legal claim to the land. That's what you're really after, isn't it? 300 acres, prime grazing, right in the path of the new railroad spur. Virgil's face went red. You're making wild accusations. Am I? B turned to the sheriff. Check the land records yourself. Then ask yourself why a man would be so eager to claim guardianship of a child whose property just happens to be worth a fortune. Reeves looked at Virgil with new eyes. That true? You after the Henley land? I'm after what's legally mine. She's not yours. Jonas's voice cut through the argument. Papers or no papers, she's not property, and she's not going back to a man who breaks her bones. Virgil's expression twisted. He turned to Reeves. Are you going to enforce the law or not? Reeves looked at Doc's journal, at B's documents, at Rose's terrified face. He was a lawman, but he wasn't a fool. I need time to sort this out. Too many conflicting claims. Till we get it straight, the girl stays with Jonas. He held up a hand as Virgil started to protest. Temporary custody. Judge's orders will need reviewing in light of this new evidence. This is horseshit. Virgil spurred his horse forward. That girl's mine by law. Jonas grabbed his rifle, didn't point it, just held it. Get off my land. Virgil's eyes narrowed. Then he smiled, cold and calculated. You made a mistake today, Callahan. A big one. He reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope, tossed it to the ground. That's from First Bank of Stone Hollow. Your note's been called. $800, due April 1st, 3 months. His smile widened. I bought your debt last week. Thought it might be useful. Jonas felt the world tilt. Drop the girl. I'll forgive the loan. Keep her? Virgil shrugged. Lose your ranch. Your choice. He wheeled his horse and rode off, not waiting for a response. Sheriff Reeves picked up the envelope, handed it to Jonas. Inside was the promissory note, signed 3 years ago when Jonas needed money for seed and cattle. $800. Due in full, April 1st. At the bottom, in fresh ink, assigned to Virgil Drummond, January 28th, 1891. Jesus, Jonas, Reeves said quietly. I'm sorry. Doc and B exchanged glances. The deputies shifted uncomfortably. Rose stepped forward, her voice small but steady. I'll go back. I don't want you to lose your ranch because of me. Jonas looked at her, this child who'd been bought and sold, beaten and discarded, who'd walked through a blizzard and was still trying to protect someone else. He knelt down, eye level with her. Rose, listen to me. This ranch, it's logs and dirt. You're a human being. There's no choice here. You understand? Her eyes filled with tears. But, no buts. His voice was firm. I'd lose everything I own before I'd let him touch you again. He stood, faced the sheriff. Tell Drummond he can have his money when hell freezes over. Reeves shook his head. He'll foreclose, Jonas. Come April, you'll have nothing. Then I'll have nothing. Jonas put his hand on Rose's shoulder. But I'll have it honest. After they left, the cabin felt too quiet. Rose sat at the table, crying silently. Jonas stood at the window, watching smoke rise from the Drummond estate. $800, 3 months. He had $40 saved. Even if he sold every head of cattle, he'd be short. The ranch was all he had left of his old life. The life with his wife, the dream of a family, the work of his father before him. and Virgil Drummond had just bought it out from under him. Rose's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry." Jonas turned. "You got nothing to be sorry for. It's my fault. It's Drummond's fault. And we're going to beat him." He didn't know how, didn't have a plan, but he said it anyway, because she needed to hear it. Outside, the first stars appeared. The temperature was dropping again, another cold night coming. Jonas added wood to the fire, made coffee. Rose sat curled in a blanket, staring at nothing. "Mr. Callahan?" she said finally. "Jonas. Just Jonas. Jonas." She looked up at him. "Why are you doing this?" He thought about his wife, bleeding out in the next room, his son, blue and still, never drawing breath. 3 years of silence in this cabin, 3 years of mornings with no reason to get up except habit. "Because you're worth it," he said simply. "That's all." She cried again, but different this time. Not hopeless, something else. Jonas let her cry, kept watch at the window, and wondered how in God's name he was going to save them both. The next morning, Jonas woke to the smell of frying bacon. He'd slept poorly, his mind churning through numbers that wouldn't add up no matter how he worked them. $800. Might as well be 8,000. Rose stood at the stove, concentrating hard. She'd learned fast how to keep the fire at the right temperature, when to flip the meat. The cabin was warm, almost cheerful in the morning light. "Didn't have to do that," Jonas said, sitting up from his bedroll on the floor. "I wanted to." She slid the bacon onto 2 tin plates. "You've done so much for me." They ate in silence. Outside, the world was still, snow-covered and quiet. After breakfast, Jonas stood, reached for his coat. "I'm going to check the cattle. You'll be all right here?" Rose nodded, but her eyes followed him to the door. "Rose," he paused, "I need you to understand something. No matter what happens with the bank, with Drummond, you're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together. You hear me?" "Yes, sir." "Jonas," a ghost of a smile. "Jonas." He spent the morning moving through the herd, checking for illness or injury. 40 head of cattle, give or take. Worth maybe $300 if he sold them all, not nearly enough. The ranch itself might bring another 200, but who'd buy land with a disputed title? The math was brutal and simple. He couldn't win. When he returned to the cabin, Rose was mending fence wire she'd found in the barn. Her hands worked carefully, twisting the ends together. She'd cut her finger, a thin line of blood on her thumb, but she kept working. "Here." Jonas took the wire from her, examined her hands. The cut was shallow. "Gotta be careful. This stuff's sharp." "I wanted to help. You're always fixing things." He wrapped her thumb in a clean rag. "Appreciate it. But you don't have to earn your keep, Rose. I told you that." "I know." She looked at the pile of wire. "But I like working. Makes me feel useful. Like I belong to something." Jonas studied her, this child who'd been treated like property, now trying to prove her worth through labor. He recognized the impulse. He'd done the same after his wife died, working himself to exhaustion so he wouldn't have to think. "Tell you what," he said. "Come spring, we'll have calves. I'll teach you to brand them. Real ranchers' work." Her eyes widened. "Really? Really? You put your mark on something, it's yours. Nobody can take that. Take." He showed her his hands, calloused and scarred. "Everything I own, I built or branded. That means something out here." "What's branding?" "Hot iron, makes a permanent mark, burns your initials into the hide so everyone knows who it belongs to." He pulled out his knife, carved letters into a scrap of wood. R.H. "Those are yours. Rose Henley. When the time comes, that's what you'll use." She traced the letters with her finger, reverent. "Nobody can change it once it's burned?" "Nobody." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I wish I could brand myself, so people would know I belong to me, not Mr. Drummond." Jonas felt something tighten in his chest. "You already do belong to yourself. The law just hasn't caught up yet." That afternoon, he rode to town again. This time he went to the bank, a small brick building that smelled of paper and old leather. The manager, a thin man named Garrett, looked up from his ledger with poorly concealed pity. "Jonas, figured you'd come by. Need to talk about the note Drummond bought." Garrett pulled out the file. $800, due April 1st. Terms are clear. "Can I get an extension? 6 months? Maybe a year?" "Not my decision anymore. Drummond holds the paper now. You'd have to ask him." Garrett's expression said exactly how that conversation would go. Jonas tried anyway. He rode to the Drummond estate, a 2-story house with painted shutters and a wraparound porch. Too much house for 2 men. A ranch hand met him at the gate. Mr. Drummond ain't receiving visitors. Tell him Jonas Callahan wants to talk business. The hand disappeared inside. 5 minutes later, he returned, shaking his head. He says you know the terms. Either pay up or give him the girl. That's the deal. Jonas rode home as the sun set, turning the snow orange and gold. When he reached the cabin, Rose was at the window again, watching for him. She had a way of standing there that broke his heart, like she expected everyone to leave eventually. He unsaddled his horse, brushed him down, checked his feed, normal things, routine. It helped quiet the rage that threatened to consume him. Inside, Rose had set the table again. She'd attempted biscuits this time, lopsided, a little burned, but edible. "How'd it go?" she asked quietly. "Not great." She sat across from him, hands folded. "Jonas, there's something I need to tell you. About my mama." He waited. Before she died, she was sewing something, spent hours on it, even when she was so sick she could barely sit up. Rose's voice dropped. "She sewed it into my coat lining, made me promise never to take it out, never to tell Mr. Drummond about it." Jonas leaned forward. "What was it?" "I don't know. She died before she could tell me." Rose stood, retrieved her coat from the peg. "But I felt it once. It's paper, folded small." She turned the coat inside out. The lining had been stitched in 2 layers, one on top of the other. Jonas could see where the thread was thicker, more deliberate. Not a repair, something hidden. "Can I open it?" Rose nodded, her face pale. Jonas took his knife, carefully cut the stitching. His hands were shaking slightly. Whatever Clara Henley had hidden, she'd thought it important enough to sew into her dying daughter's only coat. The thread parted. A folded document slipped out, yellowed with age and carefully preserved. Jonas unfolded it, and his breath caught. It was a land deed, original grant, Clara Henley, 1878, 300 acres west of Copper Ridge, and at the bottom, in Clara's careful hand, sole heir, Rose Henley, my daughter. Rose stared at it. "What does it mean?" Jonas looked at her, then at the deed, then back at her. "It means your mama was smarter than Drummond gave her credit for. You don't just belong to yourself, Rose." He set the deed on the table between them. "You own 300 acres of prime Montana land?" Jonas rode to town the next morning, the deed wrapped in oilcloth and tucked inside his coat. Rose had wanted to come, but he'd said no, safer for her at the cabin, and he didn't know yet what this document meant in practical terms. B. Lowell was at the schoolhouse preparing lessons. She looked up when Jonas entered, saw his face, and set down her chalk immediately. "You found something." He spread the deed on her desk. "Rose's mama sewed it into her coat lining before she died." B studied it, her finger tracing the signatures and seals. Outside, a crow called. The schoolhouse smelled of chalk dust and old books, sunlight slanting through the windows. "This is the original grant," she said finally. "I saw a copy in Helena, but this is the real document. With this, Rose is the legal owner of 300 acres. She looked up. "This changes everything." "Does it?" Drummond's still got his guardianship papers, which I'm increasingly certain are forged. Look, B pulled out her own notes from Helena. Clara filed her will on August 12th, naming Rose as her sole heir, 2 days after Drummond's supposed guardianship papers were signed. Why would she do that if she'd already given guardianship to Virgil? Maybe she changed her mind. Or maybe she never signed those papers at all. B's eyes were sharp. "Jonas, if we can prove forgery, Drummond loses everything. His claim to Rose, his claim to her land, all of it. How do we prove it? Handwriting analysis? We need a judge to compare the signature on the guardianship papers to Clara's known signatures." She tapped the deed. "Like this one. But that takes time. And legal proceedings, and Drummond's got 3 months to foreclose on my ranch." Jonas rubbed his face. "We don't have time." B was quiet for a moment. Then, "What if we force his hand? Make this public?" "How?" "Town council meeting, next week. Public forum. Anyone can bring business before the council. We present the deed, present the evidence of forgery, make Drummond defend himself in front of the whole town." Jonas considered. "He'll lawyer his way out of it." "Maybe, but it'll raise questions, get people talking. And once folks start asking why a wealthy rancher is so desperate to control a 10-year-old girl's property." B's smile was thin. "Even Virgil Drummond can't buy everyone's silence." Jonas started to respond, but footsteps on the schoolhouse steps interrupted them. The door swung open. Virgil Drummond stood in the doorway, flanked by two men Jonas didn't recognize. Hired hands by the look of them, big, mean-eyed, the kind who got paid to intimidate. "Callahan, Miss Lowell." Virgil's voice was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. "Heard you were in town. Thought we might have a conversation." "Don't recall inviting you to one," Jonas said. "You've been asking questions, digging through records, making accusations." Virgil stepped inside, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. "That's dangerous behavior." Bea stood, placing herself between Virgil and her desk, and the deed. "This is a schoolhouse, Mr. Drummond, not a place for threats." "Who's threatening?" Virgil smiled. "I'm simply concerned. Jonas here is under a lot of financial pressure. 3 months till foreclosure. Man in that position might make poor decisions, might listen to bad advice from people who don't understand how things work out here." "I understand perfectly," Bea said coldly. "A child was abused, her inheritance was stolen, and you're using the law as a weapon to cover it up." Virgil's smile vanished. "Careful, Miss Lowell. False accusations can cost you your position. School board doesn't like troublemakers." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." He turned to Jonas. "I'm giving you one more chance. Return the girl. I'll forgive the loan. No questions asked. Everyone walks away happy. Except Rose. Rose is a child. Children don't get to decide what's best for them." Virgil's voice hardened. "April 1st, Jonas. That's your deadline. After that, I take the ranch, then I go to court, get full custody of Rose, and you won't have a roof to keep her under anyway. You'll have nothing. She'll have nothing. And all because you decided to play hero." He gestured to his men. "Think about it." They left. The schoolhouse seemed colder after they'd gone. Bea sat down slowly. "He's desperate. Did you see? He came himself. Brought muscle. That's not confidence. That's fear." "Fear of what?" She looked at the deed. "Of losing. If this becomes public, if Rose's land claim is validated, he's not just out 300 acres. He's exposed as a fraud and a child abuser. That kind of scandal can destroy a man out here, even a rich one." Jonas picked up the deed, folded it carefully. "Town council meeting. When?" "Thursday next, 7 o'clock. We'll be there." That evening, as Jonas rode home, snow began to fall again, but lighter this time, softer. The wind had shifted. It carried a different smell now, less sharp. The creek that had been frozen solid for months showed cracks along its edges, dark water visible underneath. Spring was coming, slow but coming. At the cabin, Rose had dinner waiting. She'd gotten better at cooking, the beans weren't burned this time, and she'd even managed a decent cornbread. Jonas told her about the deed, about Bea's plan, about the town council meeting. "Will they believe us?" Rose asked. "Don't know, but we're going to make them listen." She was quiet while they ate. Outside, the soft patter of snow on the roof was almost peaceful. Jonas noticed she kept touching the pocket where he'd put the deed after showing it to her, like she needed to make sure it was real. "Jonas?" She set down her fork. "If we win, if the land is really mine, what happens?" "You own it. It's yours. But I'm 10. I can't run a ranch by myself." "No, but I can help, till you're old enough." He paused. "If you want." She looked at him with those solemn green eyes. "Would you stay, even if you lose your ranch?" The question hit harder than it should have. Jonas realized he'd been so focused on the fight with Drummond, he hadn't thought past it. If he lost this place, where would he go? What would he do? "I'd stay," he said, "long as you needed me." Rose's face crumpled. She tried to hide it, turning away, but her shoulders shook. Jonas moved around the table, knelt beside her chair. "Hey, what's this?" "Nobody's ever—" She couldn't finish, just shook her head, crying silently. He understood. Nobody had ever stayed. Not for her. Her father died. Her mother died. Drummond took her in, but only for her land. Everyone left or used her or both. "I'm staying," Jonas said quietly. "You hear me? I'm staying." She turned and wrapped her arms around his neck, holding on like she was drowning. He held her back. This child, who wasn't his but somehow was, and felt something shift in his chest. A wall he'd built 3 years ago, crumbling. Outside, the snow fell soft and steady. The fire crackled. The cabin held them both, warm and safe. For now, it was enough. But come Thursday, they'd face Drummond in front of the whole town. And Jonas had no idea if they'd win. They didn't make it to Thursday. Jonas woke to the smell of smoke. Not wood smoke from the stove. Something sharper, meaner, chemical. He bolted upright, already reaching for his boots. Through the window, orange light flickered against the darkness. The barn was on fire. "Rose!" He shook her awake. "Get dressed, now." She jerked awake, saw the light, went pale. "What?" "Fire. Stay inside. Lock the door behind me." He grabbed his rifle and ran outside into the freezing pre-dawn air. The barn was fully engulfed, flames shooting 20 feet high. The heat hit him like a fist. Inside, the horses were screaming. Jonas sprinted for the door. The wood was already too hot to touch. He wrapped his coat around his hand, yanked it open. Smoke poured out, black and choking. "Come on!" He plunged inside, eyes streaming. The two horses were in their stalls, wild with panic. He got the first one loose, slapped its rump. It bolted past him into the night. The second was harder, rearing, kicking. Jonas dodged a hoof, got the gate open, dragged the horse by its halter toward the door. Behind him, a beam cracked. He threw himself forward as it crashed down where he'd been standing, sending up a shower of sparks. Outside, both horses galloped into the snow. Jonas collapsed to his knees, coughing. The heat from the barn was intense now, flames roaring like a living thing. All his winter hay was inside. His tools, his saddles, 3 months of feed, gone. He'd saved the horses. That was something. Rose stood on the porch, in her nightgown and Jonas's coat, her face lit by the fire. She looked terrified. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. Couldn't speak yet. His lungs burned. They watched the barn collapse in on itself, sending up a column of sparks that disappeared into the dark sky. The smell of burning hay and wood filled the valley. Jonas could taste ash. When the worst of the flames had died down, leaving only smoldering timbers, Rose whispered, "He did this." Jonas nodded. No question who. This was Virgil's answer to the town council meeting. A warning shot, or maybe just cruelty. Hard to say with a man like that. As the sun rose, neighbors started arriving. Word had spread somehow, smoke visible for miles probably. 3 ranchers from down the valley rode up, offered to help clear the debris. They didn't say much, but their presence said enough. "We see what's happening here." One of them, a grizzled man named Pete Harrigan, pulled Jonas aside. "This was set. I can smell kerosene from here." "I know." "You got enemies, Jonas. Dangerous ones." "I know that too." Pete spat tobacco juice into the snow. "Well, you got friends. Not many, but enough. You need help rebuilding, you let us know." By noon, more folks had gathered. Bee arrived with a basket of food, bread, cheese, apples. Doc Kern came to check Jonas for injuries. Even the minister, Reverend Walsh, showed up, looking grim. "This is the devil's work," Walsh said, staring at the ruins. "This is Drummond's work," Jonas corrected. "Same thing, near as I can tell." That evening, as the last of the neighbors left, Jonas found something pinned to his fence post. A piece of paper, weighted down with a rock. He unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, like whoever wrote it was scared or hurried. "I'm sorry. I didn't know he'd go this far. He's planning something worse. Thursday, before the meeting. Be ready. S.D. Samuel Drummond, Virgil's son." Jonas showed the note to Rose. She read it twice, her face pale. "Samuel was always kind to me," she said quietly. "He never hit me, never called me names, but he never stopped his father either." Guilt's a powerful thing. Do you think he's telling the truth? About Thursday? Jonas looked at the ruins of his barn, still smoking. "I think Virgil Drummond will do whatever it takes to keep that land. And we just backed him into a corner." That night, Jonas didn't sleep. He sat by the window with his rifle across his knees, watching the valley. Rose slept fitfully, crying out twice. Both times Jonas went to her, quieted her nightmares with a hand on her shoulder. The next morning, another letter arrived. This one was official, delivered by a rider from town. Jonas opened it. His hands shook as he read. It was from the bank. Due to significant property damage and diminished collateral value, his loan was being called immediately. Payment in full required within 10 days, or foreclosure proceedings would begin. Virgil hadn't just burned the barn, he'd used it as an excuse to accelerate the loan. Jonas set the letter down carefully, afraid if he held it any longer he might tear it to pieces. "What is it?" Rose asked. "He's moving faster than we thought. 10 days instead of 3 months. She looked stricken. "Because of me. Because you wouldn't give me back. Because he's scared." Jonas stood, paced to the window. Men like Drummond don't burn barns unless they're desperate. Bee was right. He's afraid of what we'll say at that meeting. "But if you lose the ranch, then we lose it. But we're still going to that meeting. We're still going to show them that deed, and we're still going to tell the truth about what he did to you." Jonas turned to face her. Some things are worth more than land, Rose. She was crying again, silently. I don't want you to lose everything. I already lost everything, 3 years ago, when my wife died. The words came out before he could stop them. This ranch was just a place to keep breathing. But you gave me a reason to live again. Don't you see that? Rose crossed the room, buried her face against his chest. He held her, this child who'd become his purpose, and felt something harden in his chest. Not anger, something colder, more focused. Virgil Drummond had made a mistake. He'd thought Jonas would break under pressure, would choose his land over a child's life. He'd been wrong. Outside, the wind shifted. The smell of spring thaw was stronger now. Mud and running water and earth coming back to life. The creek ice was breaking up, dark water rushing underneath. Winter was ending. Thursday was 2 days away. Jonas looked at the smoking ruins of his barn, at the letter from the bank, at Rose's tear-stained face. We're going to win, he said. He didn't know if it was true, but he said it anyway, because she needed to hear it, and because somewhere deep down, past the fear and the anger, he still believed it might be possible. Thursday came cold and clear. Jonas woke before dawn, made coffee, checked his rifle. Rose was already up, sitting at the table in her best dress, the one Bee had given her. Her hair was pinned back neat. She looked terrified but determined. You don't have to come, Jonas said. I can tell them. No, her voice was steady. It's my story. I should be the one to tell it. They loaded the wagon. Jonas, Rose, and the deed wrapped in oilcloth. The ride to town took 2 hours. Neither of them spoke much. The valley was waking up, ice melting in the ditches, birds calling. Spring was close now, you could feel it. Stone Hollow was crowded when they arrived. Word had spread. Seemed like half the county had turned out for the meeting. Wagons lined the street, people clustered in groups, talking in low voices. When Jonas and Rose climbed down, conversation stopped. Eyes followed them. Mrs. Patterson stood with a knot of church women, her face pinched with disapproval. The bank manager, Garrett, watched from his doorway. Pete Harrigan and 2 other ranchers nodded at Jonas. Allies, few as they were. The town hall was packed, every seat taken, people standing along the walls. It smelled of wet wool and tobacco and too many bodies in a small space. Jonas found 2 seats near the front. Rose sat beside him, hands folded tight in her lap. The 3 council members sat at a table on the raised platform. Judge Morrison, Mayor Crane, and Mrs. Beatrice Holt, the only woman on the council. They looked uncomfortable, like they'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. Meeting's called to order. First order of business. The door banged open. Virgil Drummond strode in, flanked by a man in an expensive suit, a lawyer from Helena by the look of him. Behind them came Samuel, Virgil's son, looking pale and miserable. Virgil took a seat in the front row, directly across from Jonas. Their eyes met. Virgil smiled. First order, Morrison continued, is a petition from Mr. Jonas Callahan regarding guardianship of one Rose Henley, age 10. Mr. Callahan? Jonas stood. The room went silent. Rose Henley's mother, Clara, died last year. Virgil Drummond claimed guardianship, but I have reason to believe that guardianship was obtained through fraud. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Virgil's lawyer stood immediately. Objection. That's a serious allegation without evidence. I have evidence. B. Lowell rose from her seat in the back. She walked forward, laid documents on the council table. Clara Henley filed a will on August 12, 1890, naming her daughter Rose as sole heir to her property. That will was filed 2 days after Mr. Drummond's supposed guardianship papers were signed. Why would she sign over guardianship, then file a will that contradicts it? People change their minds, the lawyer said smoothly. Or people forge signatures. B pulled out another document. This is Clara Henley's original homestead grant. Her signature. Compare it to the signature on the guardianship papers. Judge Morrison studied both documents. His face shifted. These don't match. They're close, the lawyer argued. Signed years apart. Penmanship changes. I have more. Doc Kern stood, holding his medical journal. I examined Rose Henley on January 30th, found evidence of systematic abuse, 3 healed fractures at different stages of healing, malnutrition, signs of repeated trauma. The room erupted in whispers. Virgil's face went red. The girl's clumsy, his lawyer said. Children fall. Children don't break their ribs 3 separate times from falling. Doc's voice was iron. This is abuse, and I'll testify to that in any court. Morrison banged his gavel. Order! Order in this hall! Jonas reached into his coat, pulled out the deed. There's one more thing. Clara Henley hid this in her daughter's coat before she died. It's the original land grant, 300 acres with Rose named as sole heir. He laid it on the table. The council members leaned forward, examining it. This is why he wanted her, Jonas said, his voice carrying. Not to protect her, to steal her land. 300 acres right in the path of the railroad spur, worth a fortune. Virgil shot to his feet. This is slander. I took that girl in out of Christian charity. You beat her. Jonas's voice was quiet but deadly. You starved her. You broke her bones. Then when she became inconvenient, you left her to freeze in a blizzard. That's your idea of charity? I have legal guardianship. Forged guardianship. B's voice rang out. The signatures don't match. The timeline doesn't make sense. You wanted her land, so you forged papers and called it legal. The lawyer was on his feet now, talking fast, but the room wasn't listening to him anymore. They were listening to Jonas, to B, to Doc. Then Rose stood up. The room went silent. She was small, trembling, but she walked to the front, stood before the council. Her voice was thin but clear. My mama told me I was born free. She said nobody could buy me or sell me or own me. Rose looked at Virgil. You said I was damaged goods, that I belonged to you, but Mama was right. I don't belong to anybody but myself. She turned to the council. I don't know about laws or papers or what's proper, but I know Mr. Drummond hurt me, and I know Jonas saved me, and I know if you make me go back, I'll die. Maybe not right away, but someday. Her voice broke. Please don't make me go back. The silence was absolute. Mrs. Patterson had tears on her face. Even the lawyer looked shaken. Then someone stood in the back. Samuel Drummond. His voice shook. She's telling the truth. Virgil spun. Sit down. No. Samuel walked forward, pulled an envelope from his coat. This is a letter. Confession. I wrote it 2 days ago because I couldn't live with it anymore. He laid it on the table. My father forged those guardianship papers. I watched him do it. He wanted Rose's land for a railroad deal, 300 acres for $10,000. You're lying. Virgil started toward his son. Sheriff Reeves, who'd been standing by the door, moved to intercept. That's far enough, Virgil. Samuel's hands shook, but he kept talking. He beat her. I saw the bruises. I heard her crying at night, and I did nothing. I'm sorry, Rose. I'm so sorry. He set down the letter and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Virgil stood frozen, his face purple with rage. This is conspiracy. This is justice. Judge Morrison's voice was hard. He looked at the documents, at Rose, at Doc's medical journal. I'm voiding the guardianship effective immediately. The signatures are clearly fraudulent. Rose Henley is hereby placed in the temporary custody of Jonas Callahan, pending formal adoption proceedings. He banged the gavel. Furthermore, I'm ordering the sheriff to investigate allegations of child abuse and document forgery. Mr. Drummond, you're not to go near this child. Is that clear? Virgil's lawyer was whispering urgently in his ear, but Virgil shook him off. You're making a mistake. All of you. That land is worth— Get him out of here, Morrison said to Reeves. The sheriff moved forward. Virgil backed up, still talking, but his words were lost in the sudden eruption of voices. People were standing, arguing, gesturing. Pete Harrigan and his rancher friends moved to block Virgil's path to Rose. Jonas knelt beside her. You did it. You were so brave. She collapsed against him, crying. He held her while the room churned around them, while Reeves escorted a shouting Virgil out the door, while B and Doc stood guard like sentries outside. The sun was climbing. The snow on the street was melting, running in rivulets toward the creek. The air smelled of mud and wet earth and possibility. Spring had arrived. 2 weeks later, Jonas stood in Judge Morrison's chambers. Rose was beside him, wearing a new dress B had helped her pick out. The judge signed the adoption papers with slow, deliberate strokes. Jonas Callahan, you are hereby granted legal guardianship and adoption rights for Rose Henley, pending a 6-month probationary period. Morrison looked up. That means you're responsible for her, her education, her welfare, her future. You understand? Yes, sir. Morrison turned to Rose. And you, young lady, you understand Mr. Callahan is now legally your father? That means you listen to him, respect him, and let him guide you. Can you do that? Rose looked at Jonas, then back at the judge. Yes, sir. Morrison signed the final line. Then it's done. Congratulations. Outside the courthouse, the sun was warm. The creek was running full, ice completely gone, birds sang in the cottonwoods. Rose slipped her hand into Jonas's. Papa? It was the first time she'd called him that. Jonas felt his throat tighten. Yeah? Can we go home now? Home. Not your home or the ranch. Home. Yeah, he said. Let's go home. They climbed into the wagon. As they rode out of town, Jonas saw Virgil Drummond standing outside the saloon watching them leave. His face was a mask of hatred. The bank had foreclosed on Jonas's ranch the week before. But Rose's 300 acres, her land, legally hers now, that was safe. And Jonas would manage it until she came of age. They'd lost one home, but they'd gained another, and maybe that's how it was supposed to be. Spring came in earnest. The snow melted away, revealing brown earth that would soon turn green. Jonas and Rose moved their few belongings to Clara's old homestead. Rose's land now, 300 acres of rolling grassland west of Copper Ridge. The cabin there was smaller than Jonas's had been, but sturdy. Clara had built it well. It just needed clearing out, some repairs. Pete Harrigan and the other ranchers came to help. They brought lumber donated from their own stores, nails, tools. In 2 weeks, they'd rebuilt the barn that had collapsed years ago. For the girl, Pete said gruffly when Jonas tried to thank him. She deserves a fresh start. Rose worked alongside them, fetching water, holding boards steady, learning. She was stronger now, still thin, but color had returned to her cheeks. She smiled more, laughed sometimes at Jonas's terrible jokes. One morning in early May, Jonas woke to find her already outside. The sun was just cresting the mountains, painting everything gold and pink. Rose stood at the fence line that marked the eastern boundary of her property, the same spot where Jonas had found her half dead 4 months ago. He walked out to join her. The grass was thick with wildflowers now, purple lupine, yellow arrowleaf, Indian paintbrush the color of sunset. Beautiful, isn't it? He said. She nodded. Mama used to bring me out here. Before she got sick, she'd point to the mountains and say, "All of this is ours, Rosie. Nobody can take it from us." She was right. Rose was quiet for a moment, then, "Jonas, can I ask you something?" "Always. You said you'd teach me to brand, when there were calves." Jonas smiled. He'd been waiting for this. "Figured you'd remember that. Is it time?" "It's time." They spent the morning preparing. Jonas had bought a new branding iron in town, had the blacksmith forge Rose's initials into it. R.H. Rose held it up to the light, tracing the letters with her finger. "These are mine." "They are. And anything you put them on is yours too. That's the law out here. Your mark, your property." The neighbors had left 3 young calves as a starter herd. Gifts, really, though they'd called them loans. Jonas penned one while Rose watched. It was a heifer, red with white on her face, maybe 4 months old. "First thing," Jonas said, "is respect. This animal's in your care now. You mark her so people know she's yours, but you also feed her, protect her, make sure she thrives. Branding's not just about ownership, it's about responsibility. You understand?" Rose nodded solemnly. Jonas built up the fire, showed her how to heat the iron till it glowed orange. The smell of wood smoke filled the air. A meadowlark sang from the fence post. "When it's ready, you press it firm. Don't hesitate. That makes it worse for the animal. Quick and clean. Can you do that?" "I can." She took the iron. Her hands were steady. Jonas held the calf still while Rose positioned the brand against its flank. She pressed down, counted to 3 like he'd taught her, then pulled away. The RH was burned clear and permanent into the hide. The calf bawled once, then trotted off when Jonas released her. Rose watched it go, the brand visible on its red coat. "That's mine now," she said quietly. "Really mine. Really yours." She turned to Jonas, eyes bright. "Can I brand something else?" "What did you have in mind?" Rose walked to the fence post, the same post she'd been standing by that morning. She heated the iron again, then pressed it against the wood. The smell of burning pine mixed with the wood smoke. When she pulled away, RH was seared deep into the post. "There," she said. "So everyone knows. This is my land. I'm not damaged goods. I'm not anybody's property." She touched the burned letters, then looked out across the valley, her valley now. The grass was green, the wildflowers thick as a carpet. In the distance, cattle grazed. The cabin stood solid against the mountains. "Mama was right," Rose said. "Nope. Nobody can take this from us." Jonas put his hand on her shoulder. "Your mama was a smart woman, and brave. She made sure you'd have this even when she knew she was dying. That's love, Rose, real love, making sure the people you care about are protected, even after you're gone. Rose leaned against him. I'm glad she sent me to you, even if it was an accident. Don't think it was an accident. I think your mama knew exactly what she was doing when she told you I'd help. Somehow she knew. They stood there as the sun climbed higher, warming the earth. The wind carried the scent of new grass and wildflowers and possibility. Behind them, the cabin waited, small but theirs. The barn stood ready for the growing herd. The land stretched out, 300 acres of future. Jonas thought about his old ranch, lost now. He'd mourned it at first, the home he'd built with his wife, the dream that died with her. But standing here with a Rose, looking out over land that would be hers someday, worked by her hands, passed to her children, maybe losing one dream made room for another. Come on, he said. Got fence to mend before supper. Rose smiled, not the small, frightened smile of a broken child, but something bigger, freer. Race you back to the barn! She took off running, her laughter trailing behind her. Jonas followed, his own smile breaking through. The meadowlark sang, the sun shone warm, the grass bent in the wind, green and alive and new. Winter was over, they'd survived, and spring, real spring, the kind that lasted, had finally come. Now, I knew Jonas Callahan for 20 years after all this happened. Saw him and Rose at the general store every month, her growing tall and strong, him growing gray but content. That 300 acres? She ran it herself by the time she was 16. By 25, she'd doubled the herd, bought another 100 acres adjacent. Jonas taught her everything: branding, fencing, reading land, reading people. But the most important thing he taught her was this: she was born free. Not bought, not owned, free. Virgil Drummond? He left Montana after the trial, served 2 years for forgery and child endangerment. Heard he died somewhere back east alone and bitter. Some folks say that's justice. I say it's just consequence. A man reaps what he sows, and Drummond sowed nothing but cruelty. People ask me what the story means. I tell them, family ain't about blood or papers or legal claims. It's about who stands in the blizzard with you, who teaches you to put your mark on the world, who says you're mine and means you're free. Jonas lost his ranch, the land his father cleared, the home where his wife died. Lost everything he'd built over 15 years. But he gained a daughter. And Rose? She got what every child deserves. Someone who chose her. Someone who saw her worth when the world called her damaged goods. Last time I saw them, it was spring. Just like that first spring after the hearing. Rose was showing Jonas her first grandchild, a baby girl with green eyes and her great-grandmother Clara's stubborn jaw. And if you walked out to that eastern fence line, you could still see it burned into the old post. RH. Some things, once you mark them yours, they stay that way. That's the truth of it. That's all the truth a man needs.